take you back to KwaZulu-Natal now. As we heard just a few minutes ago, mourners flocking to Kwakhethomthandayo at the Royal Palace for King Goodwill Zwelithini kaBhekuzulu ceremony. The AmaZulu king bowing out on Friday last week, and he'll be planted in the early hours of tomorrow morning. That's a Thursday morning. The private ceremony will be carried out by his warriors. We were chatting to Siphamandla Goge in Nongoma when we just lost the line there. Let's find out what's happening now. Siphamandla, good morning once again, and just give us an idea of what happens from now.
Well, from here, these warriors that you see behind me, they will await the arrival of another group that will join them, and then after that they will go to the local mortuary where the king's remains are kept. From there they will help escort that motorcade and that convoy. They will stay with that motorcade and that convoy up until it gets to Kwakhethomthandayo Royal Palace. I've just spotted a police van arriving here to keep a close eye here because authorities are worried about the increasing number of people who are gathering here. They are concerned that they will not be able, some of them, to comply with COVID-19 regulations. There won't be any social distancing. Some are wearing masks, others are not wearing masks. So that is the concern that the police have. They are coming out here to keep a close eye. So right now, these Amabutho are gathered outside Linduzulu Royal Palace, which is in Nongoma. After that, they will make their way to Kwakhethomthandayo Royal Palace. That's where the procession and the motorcade will make its way to. And that's where we expect that royal family members will gather and perform whatever needs to be performed once the king's body has arrived. And then after that, the king's remains then will be interred in a private ceremony in the early hours of Thursday. That's between time from Thursday to at least 2 a.m. on Thursday. After that, there will be that official memorial service which will start on Thursday at around about 10 o'clock.
So just watching and listening, Siphamandla, to what's happening around you there, you know, normally one expects somber scenes when it comes to laying someone to rest, but we're seeing, and I suppose what it is a celebration of the king's life, and this kind of send-off might be very different to what most people are traditionally used to when it comes to a death, but certainly sounds like a celebration of his life to me.
Indeed, I'm going to ask my colleague Bonga Mkhize to show you a traditional dance there to prove your point that this is a celebration of the monarch's life here. Is Amabutho singing and dancing, showcasing their traditional skills here and their traditional skills in honor of their departed monarch. Every time they would sing and they would dance, he would join them. So this is really a celebration of the king's life.
So,
and then as we speak now, they are busy starting another song.
All right, maybe let's just take a listen in. Let's just sort of feel the mood for a moment there, Siphamandla.
Indeed, let's go to this natural sound. Well, there you have it. That's the natural sound here. You have Amabutho doing their thing here, performing traditional song and dance here. Let's look at one of them there, showcasing his skills, celebrating the life of his departed monarch. You will have such scenes throughout the day. It will continue to happen for the rest of the day here. And when the king's body makes its way to the mortuary, I can tell you that you will have such scenes throughout the streets streets of Nongoma as AmaZulu are celebrating the life of King Zwelithini Goodwill kaBhekuzulu.
Well, Siphamandla, I suppose the question that's most been asked, other than around the laying to rest of the king, is on his successor. And just speaking to experts last week, or those who are in the know about the royal household, saying that a king cannot be laid to rest until that successor is named. What do we know so far? I mean, we understand he has his sired 28 children. We know that the eldest, the first son, was killed just last year here in Johannesburg. So any idea as to what is happening in terms of his successor and the announcement thereof?
We will only get to know at least tomorrow when the King's will is read after the memorial service. Based on what the Zulu traditional Prime Minister Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi told us, we expect that the King's will be read by his lawyers, and that's when we will at least get an understanding of who will be the successor, or at least someone who will act on the throne up until or while the royal family members are still finalizing the issue of succession. For now, that has been a closely guarded secret, and it will continue to be like that for a very long time, or at least up until that will is read. That's when we will be able to get a picture with succession. It's not something that is widely and publicly discussed in the Zulu nation, and it's been like that for years. I remember when the news broke that the late king is no more, I asked Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who is the traditional prime minister of the Zulu nation, to say, did the king ever discuss with him who was going to take over? He said, unfortunately, the king never shared that with him. And many people in the royal family are not aware of at least a possible candidate to take over. And that can only be revealed once that will is read.
Well, Sipha, I mean, just talking about the reading of that will, we know that the king has 6 wives, like we said, 28 children, one of whom was killed last year. So any idea as to what happens in terms of, who gets what? Because with the new king are going to come new queens and other children as well. So how does that work, if you have any idea?
It's a difficult one. Remember, it hasn't happened for 50 years that the king departs. So what you will get is that everything that will be happening from today and tomorrow moving forward will be a learning curve even for Zulu royal family members, because the king has been on the throne for 50 years. So they have never had an opportunity to deal with such news of the departure of the king. So obviously a king will have to be installed and coronated. After that, as to what will happen, of course the queens will remain in their palaces, because the new king cannot, and culturally he will not be able to chase away his mothers. So we know that the current queens will remain in their palaces. Whether the new king will need to build new palaces, that's another issue that will only be decided by the new monarch. Remember that he would have had a home anyway where he would have lived with his mother and siblings. So that palace will belong to him as his home. Even the current palace, by the way, where Kwakhethomthandayo, where the current monarch's remains will be taken to, that is where his father lived, as more and more traditional song and dance is going on here. My colleague Bongam Kiza will show you in the meantime. So the new king will have a home, of which would have been the palace where his mother lived. As to what will happen then moving forward, he will have to decide whether he needs a new palace or not. And I guess it's not as easy as that. There are too many cultural issues to consider, and then that decision will be made. But for now, we'll only have to wait up until that will is read, and there will be a clear direction as to what will happen moving forward.
All right, well, let's talk about the actual ceremony, if you can still hear me, Sipha, and what's expected to happen in the early hours of tomorrow morning, the actual laying to rest ceremony. I suppose a lot of people just wondering about the term, the planting of the king. If you have any insight into that, maybe just tell us why it's referred to in that term.
Okay, because there is a Zulu term for it called ukutshalwa kwesilo or ukutshalwa kwembube. Now, when you plant something, it is widely expected that something will grow out of that. So